You know, I'm going to use diobesity as my example, diabetes, because I'm spending a lot of time on it, both professionally and in a pro bono way. I think there's a lot going on in that space, and we've heard a lot about it already. Right, Andrew? You know, we've already heard a lot about it. We're going to hear more about it, I'm sure. There is a lot happening in that space. Here's something that I always like when you pick a challenge. Surf's up on this one. This is out of the New York Times. The Bristol-Myers Squibb Foundation today announced Together on Diabetes, yada, 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 a 5-year, $100 million initiative to help patients living with type 2 diabetes better manage their disease beyond the doors of the doctor's office, in their homes and communities, and for the course of their disease. So getting out of that space. A $100 million effort by the Bristol-Myers Foundation to start saying, hey, what else can we do? People are out there spending money, and this is kind of an interesting area. I'd like to see if I can play this video, and it's not coming up.
Can you talk about, because I think you brought up a good point about newly diagnosed patients and the fears. What are some of the fears that you hear during that first visit?
Well, it varies, but I think not knowing what to eat is probably the number one fear. And just feeling overwhelmed when they go to the grocery store, when they're at a restaurant. Because eating being a 3-time-a-day type thing, that is usually what's on people's mind, because they, have to think about it so many times per day. And maybe it's a family that's never really done much meal planning, or, I haven't met with a patient, but I got a call from a patient last week that we're meeting with in a couple weeks, just diagnosed. They've been married, it was actually his wife that was doing more of the talking. They've been married 30 years, and they've eaten nothing but like fried foods their entire life. And,
oh my.
Yeah, and literally, he's just so overwhelmed, and she's wanting to support him, and thank goodness he has her, because sometimes 50-year-old bachelor, it's a little more of a challenge, but they have to completely change it. So I think food is the number one fear, for sure.
And how does she learn? He's the patient, right?
Yeah, and
so how does she learn about what to cook?
I want her to come with him to the appointments, absolutely. I wish we could get couples in more often. We have it, quite frequently where the spouse comes in, but it's something that if the one that's not doing the cooking or the shopping isn't sitting there learning, you just have to hope that the husband takes home the information, or the wife, but it's usually the wife that does the cooking. So that is a challenge. That is a big challenge, is who's doing the cooking and really making the decisions here.
You had talked about one of the goals is to reduce complications. Do newly diagnosed patients understand the complications?
A few of them will be like, asking about foot amputations. Like, why do I know somebody that had a foot amputated? And so kind of explaining the basics for how complications can occur. Blindness and foot amputations, I think, are the things we hear about most. But those other complications, kidney failure and cardiovascular disease, I don't think most patients think of those as diabetic complications. I think they think of the extremes. The blindness and the foot amputations is what is usually in their mind, because that's what they may have heard from some, a family member or a friend who knew a friend who knew a friend. But it's usually not something they understand at all fully.
Misty is a new generation of pharmacist coach. I don't know how many of you have run into a pharmacist coach. She was a part of something called the 10-City Challenge, where 10 cities went after it with different teams of pharmacists and said, what can we do? That was funded by GlaxoSmithKline. And what they did was they went after the American Pharmacists Association, trained pharmacists as coaches, and in this case, Misty is charged with spending an hour a quarter on not only medication, but diet and exercise and other lifestyle functions with each of her diabetic patients. And it's a remarkably successful program, and it's actually having an impact. But I think what you heard there was kind of typical of the kind of thing we hear from pharmacists who are working day in, day out with diabetics who come in and say, well, I'm a diabetic, what does it mean? How much time did the doctor spend with them on it? Well, 8 minutes was the length of the meeting, so maybe from diagnosis to leaving the office, 2 minutes, something like that. Not a whole lot of nutrition education goes on in the doctor's office. So the idea here is that the pharmacist coach is going after this. People like Walgreens, and there's 7,500 outlets, are they about that right now? And tens of thousands of pharmacists are looking into this as a new way of doing business, and what's going on. And again, they're not just talking about medication, they're talking about nutrition and everything else as they go forward. And oh, by the way, when we talk about, I'm a psychologist, when we talk about needs, we talk about compelling needs, finding the compelling needs. Give me a good fear any day. I'll take out a compelling need. Give me anger, give me frustration. Give me those kinds of things and I'll give you a motivated to change customer. And you have motivated to change people when you start seeing these kinds of things. If they're not afraid when they first get the diagnosis, when they start getting into it, they soon are. This is a shameless plug. I'm doing an open innovation session with the American Pharmacists Association Foundation, where we're getting a group of companies and other groups together to start saying, what can we do about what we're starting to know about what does seem to work in this space of diobesity, because they do go hand in hand. The American Pharmacists Foundation is in it, Walgreens, Giant Food and Pharmacy, FDA, and many more. I also have Rich Products and Jarden Consumer Products coming in as companies. And I'd like to offer a seat to others who are interested. If you want to come to this, if your company is interested in this space, let me know. You're going to get more data than you can eat, and you're going to get to meet some people who are really interested in changing the way America thinks and acts in this space, and are beginning to do it in the trenches. Just in case you already know, it's a big opportunity. Right now, diabetics, we have a diabetic population in this country the size of Australia, and we're going for one, we're going to add to that the size of Germany. How about that? That's a pretty good sized market.